Welcome dear friends to my video lecture on new social movement theory and questions. The content will be helpful for TRB education students. Questions and other things certainly will be helpful for NET education students. Let us straight away enter into the topic. New social movement theory. New social movement theory is a sociological concept developed in the late 20th century to explain new types of social movements. These movements differ from older labor movements which primarily focused on class-based issues like worker rights and economic reform. Unlike these earlier movements, new social movements center on cultural, environmental and identity-related issues. Examples include feminist movements, environmental activism, civil rights, and LGBTQ, that is transgender people rights, peace movements, and other campaigns for social justice. This video explores new social movement theory, its main ideas, how it differs from older social movement theories, and its importance in today's society. What are the origins of new social movement theory? New social movement theory gained popularity in the 1970s and 1980s, especially in Europe. Scholars like Alain Touraine, Jukran Habermas, Klaus Offe, and Alberto Mellucci developed its foundational ideas. They noticed that new social movements were emerging in post-industrial societies, focusing on identity, quality of life, democracy instead of economic or class-based issues. I hope you understand this. Formerly they were worried about only the economic and class-based issues like Marxism. Now the new social movements are worried about identity, quality of life and democratic style of life. I hope you understand this. So there is a turning point now, and it has changed from economic class-based problems to identity problem, quality of life and democracy problems, etc. So new social movement theory suggests that major conflicts in society today are about culture, identity and information control rather than material or economic issues. What are the key characteristics of new social movements? Cultural and identity focus. New social movements prioritize issues of identity, cultural change and social recognition. For instance, feminism or transgender rights and environmentalism focus on the dignity and rights of marginalized duties. Then there is a decentralization. Of course, they are concerned about decentralization of the work or responsibilities, etc. New social movements are often decentralized, emphasizing grassroots participation and local autonomy. This structure is common in feminist and environmental movements where multiple voices shape goals. Then globalization. Many new social movements address global issues such as climate change and human rights that require international cooperation. Then, it exhibits values over material interest. New social movements are value-driven, focusing on justice, equality, and environmental sustainability rather than economic benefits. For example, environmental activists are motivated by concerns for future generations. Post-materialism. Socialist Ronald Inglehart's concept of post-materialism helps explain new social movements. What does this mean? As societies shift from material needs to values like self-expression and identity, movements for environmental protection and personal autonomy have gained importance. So, society shift from material needs to values like self-expression and identity. What are the differences between old and new social movements? Class-based versus identity-based. Old movements were often about class conflict and economic redistribution, while New social movements focus on identity and cultural recognition. Then another difference is that centralized versus decentralized organization. The old social movements or traditional social movements are centralized. One leader will be there, others will be followers. But a new social movement talks about decentralized organization, giving power to a different level, even at the grassroots level, maybe the rural areas like. Traditional movements had clear hierarchies and strong leadership, but new social movements are more inclusive and decentralized, often emphasizing collective decision making. Then local versus global. While older movements were mainly national, many new social movements address global concerns such as climate change requiring international actions. Then economic versus cultural. Older movements is centered around economic issues like wages and inequality, whereas new social movements are more likely to address cultural matters such as gender norms and human rights. What are the major examples of new social movements? Feminist movement. Feminism fights gender-based discrimination and promotes equality, focusing on issues like reproductive rights and pay equity. So feminist movement. Then environmental movement. This movement, which includes organizations like Greenpeace, addresses global ecological issues such as climate change and pollution. Then LGBTQ, that is a transgender rights movement. This transgender rights movement challenges societal norms about sexual orientation and gender identity, advocating for equal rights and recognition. Anti-nuclear and peace movements. These movements emerged to promote global peace and prevent the environmental harm of nuclear weapons. Anti-nuclear and peace movements. What are the criticisms leveled against new social movement theory? New social movement theory has also been criticized for all these reasons. Overemphasis on cultural issues. Critics argue that new social movement theory overlooks the economic inequality and class struggles, especially relevant in developing countries. The lack of centralized leadership. While decentralization allows participation, critics argue it may hinder political effectiveness. Fragmentation. Some say new social movement theories focus on identity politics could fragment efforts or break into pieces efforts toward broader social change. Some say new social movement theories focus on identity politics could fragment. That is their hope. What is the conclusion? New social movement theory is a useful way to understand modern decentralized activism focused on identity, culture, and global cooperation. These movements challenge traditional authority and offer new models for social change. As society evolves, however, new social movement theory must be re-evaluated to consider ongoing economic and political issues. It offers a valuable lens to understand the complexities of today's activism and shifting priorities in a globalized world. Let us ask some of the questions. Let us analyze some of the questions. What is the primary focus of new social movement theory? Class-based economic struggles, cultural and identity issues, political parties and elections, military conflicts. That is cultural and identity issues. New political movement is concerned about cultural and identity issues. NSM theory emphasizes movements based on culture, identity and social change rather than class-based economic struggles. Which scholar is not typically associated with the development of new social movement theory? Alain Touraine, Karl Marx, Jürgen Habermas, Alberto Bellucci. That is Karl Marx. Karl Marx is associated with the older social movement theories based on class struggle, whereas the others contributed to new social movement theory. So Karl Marx, belongs to the older school of, movement theory, social movement theory. Marxism. In which decade did the new social movement theory rise to prominence? 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, 1990s. 1970s. New social movement theory gained prominence in the 1970s and 1980s as a response to changing forms of social activism. What is the key difference between old social movements and new social movements? New social movements focus on class struggles. Is it true? Old social movements focus on cultural recognition. Is it true? New social movements emphasize economic redistribution. Is it true? New social movements focus on identity and cultural change. Is it true? What is the correct answer? What is the key difference between old social movements and new social movements? That is, new social movements focus on identity and cultural change. New social movements differ from older movements by prioritizing issues of identity and culture over economic redistribution. Which of the following is not a characteristic of new social movement? Decentralized leadership, grassroots participation, material gain, post-materialist values. Which of the following is not a characteristic of new social movement? New social movements are driven more by values like justice and identity rather than material gain. What is the term post-materialism referred to in the context of new social movement theory? Focus on economic issues, concern with the military conflicts, shift towards self-expression and identity issues, dependence on centralized leadership. What is the term post-materialism referred to in the context of new social movement theory? That is, shift toward self-expression and identity issues. Post-materialism refers to the shift away from material concerns, that is economic security, to issues of self-expression and identity. Which of the following movements would most likely be considered a new social movement? Labor unions fighting for higher wages, civil rights movements for racial equality, anti-slavery movements of the 19th century, environmental activism for climate actions. Which of the following movements would most likely be considered a new social movement? That is, environmental activism for climate action. Environmental movements focus on global issues and values, making them examples of new social movements. Yes. Which movement primarily challenges patriarchal structures and advocates for gender equality? Patriarchal structure, that is a father, in the line of fathers. Patriarchal patriarchal structures. Labor movement, environmental movement, feminist movement, anti-nuclear movement. What is the question? Which movement primarily challenges patriarchal structure? That is a father line families. That is the idea. Feminist movement. The feminist movement is focused on dismantling patriarchal systems and advocating for gender equality, a key new social movement concern. A central aspect of new social movement theory is the decentralization of movement leadership. What does this mean? Movements are led by a single powerful leader. Leadership is spread across many groups and individuals. Movements are government controlled. Leaders are chosen through elections. Which is the right one? A central aspect of new social movement theory is the decentralization of movement leadership. So the leadership is spread across many groups and individuals. New social movements often have decentralized structures, allowing broader participation rather than hierarchical leadership. The LGBTQ, that is transgender rights movement, is an example of a new social movement because it primarily focuses on economic redistribution, identity and cultural recognition, political party formation, religious reforms. Which is the right one? That is identity and cultural recognition. The LGBTQ, that is a transgender rights movements, addresses issues of identity and social acceptance central to new social movement theory. Which of the following is a global issue addressed by new social movements? Worker safety in factories. local election reform, climate change, protectionist trade policies. Which of the following is a global issue addressed by the new social movement, that is climate change? New social movements like the environmental movement often address global issues like climate change, which require international cooperation. Who coined the term post-materialism? Jürgen Habermas, Ronald Inglehart, Klaus Hofer, Alain Touraine. So which is the right one? Ronald Inglehart. Ronald Inglehart introduced the concept of post-materialism, which emphasizes self-expression and quality of life over material concerns. That means they are not giving importance to material concerns, they are giving importance to self-expression and quality of life. That is the idea here. Who coined the term post-materialism? That is Ronald Inglehart, and he has this idea. He gives more importance to self-expression and quality rather than material concerns. What is a common criticism of new social movement theory? It focuses too much on economic inequality. It relies heavily on centralized leadership. It overemphasizes cultural issues at the expense of economic struggles. It is irrelevant in post-industrial societies. So what is a common criticism of new social movement theory? It overemphasizes cultural issues at the expense of economic struggles. Critics argue that the new social movement theory neglects the continuing importance of economic inequality and class-based struggles. Which of the following describes the organizational structure typical of new social movements? Which of the following describes the organizational structure peculiar to NSM? Yes, that is new social movements. Hierarchical and authoritarian, democratic and participatory, centralized and bureaucratic, traditional and elitist. It is a democratic and participatory, that is what it aims at. New social movements are often organized democratically with an emphasis on broad participation and local autonomy. Which of the following was a key concern of the anti-nuclear movement? Which of the following was a key concern of the anti-nuclear movement? Economic inequality, military disarmament and peace, gender equality, worker rights. Of course, this is a military disarmament and peace. I think reducing this military functions, and then aiming at peace for all the nations. That is the idea here. The anti-nuclear movement focused on preventing nuclear war and advocating for peace and disarmament. Which theorist emphasized the role of communication and public discourse in new social movement theory? Jürgen Habermas, Karl Marx, Ronald Inglehart, Antonia Gramsci. Which theorist emphasized the role of communication? That is Jürgen Habermas. Habermas stressed the importance of communication and public discourse in shaping the goals of new social movements. The feminist movement can be described as an example of new social movement because it focuses on class struggle, economic redistribution, cultural recognition and gender identity, military conflict. The feminist movement can be described as an example of new social movement because it focuses on cultural recognition and gender identity. The feminist movement is concerned with the issues of gender identity, cultural recognition and equal rights, key aspects of new social movement. Which of the following is not a post-materialist value? Not a post-materialist value. Which is the one out of these four? Quality of life, environmental sustainability, economic security, self-expression. Economic security, that is the old social movement aspect. So economic security, Marxism and all comes under that. Post-materialist values focus on issues like self-expression and quality of life rather than material concerns like economic security. What type of issues are most commonly addressed by new social movements? Economic inequality, political corruption, cultural identity and the environmental issues, tax reforms. So what type of issues are most commonly addressed by new social movement? That is nothing but cultural identity and environmental issues. NSMs focus on issues related to culture, identity and environmental sustainability rather than economic or political reforms. The concept of post-materialism suggests that modern societies are primarily concerned with basic survival, class struggle, lifestyle, self-expression and identity, economic redistribution. Which is the right one? The concept of post-materialism suggests that modern societies are primarily concerned with lifestyle, self-expression and identity. Post-materialism emphasizes concerns with the lifestyle, identity and self-expression typical of modern societies. The LGBTQ movement challenges which societal norm? Class hierarchy, heteronormativity, patriarchy, economic redistribution. The LGBTQ movement challenges which societal norm? Heteronormativity, that means a man and a woman. That is heteronormativity. So this LGBTQ movement challenges this type of man-woman relationship. Only that is ideal. No, people say, and we hold that. The family is made up of man and woman, and family has to be built upon through this man and woman, something like. So all the religions talk about it and all. But whereas this group is against that. That is called a heteronormativity. Man and woman relationship is heteronormativity. Whereas they are having that homonormativity, that we cannot say that. But then what they are hinting at is that man, woman, woman. No? That type of relationship. Man loves man, woman loves woman. No? That type of thing. They are having that type of view, this transgenders. No? So that is the idea here. So LGBTQ movement challenges societal norms related to heteronormativity and advocates for diverse sexual orientations and gender identities. Which of the following is a primary concern of the environmental movement? Increased industrialization, gender equality, ecological sustainability, economic reform. Ecological sustainability. Which of the following is a primary concern of the environmental movement? Ecological sustainability. The environmental movement emphasizes ecological sustainability and the responsible use of natural resources. New social movement theory argues that social movements in post-industrial societies are less about economic issues and more about what? New social movement theory argues that social movements in post-industrial societies are less about economic issues and more about religious reform, political party formation, identity, lifestyle and culture, worker rights. So they are more concerned about identity, lifestyle and culture. In post-industrial societies, new social movements focus more on identity, culture and lifestyle than on economic issues. A criticism of the decentralized structure of new social movements is that it can lead to lack of international cooperation, difficulty in achieving political goals, increased economic inequality, over-centralization of leadership. So what is the criticism of the decentralized structure of new social movement theory? That is difficulty in achieving political goals. Decentralized structures can make it harder for movements to achieve concrete political goals due to the lack of unified leadership. What they want is that one man at the top, one leader at the top, everybody has to follow. And the criticism is that if there are more than one leaders, then we cannot achieve, the social movement theory cannot achieve its political goals. That is the idea given here. The term globalization in the context of new social movement theory refers to what? Expansion of national industries, movements addressing issues beyond the national borders, increase in global military power, decline of local social movements. So, the term globalization in the context of new social movement theory refers to movements addressing issues beyond national borders. Many new social movements address global issues such as climate change and human rights, which require international cooperation. I hope you understood this. I think main points have been given here. Kindly go through each and everything again and again. Of course, PDF files also will be published soon. So that way you will be very much helped, I hope. And the new questions also will be given, in the for the group members. Join the group also. You are most welcome. God bless you abundantly. And let us meet in other video lecture. Kindly subscribe, like, give your comments, suggestions also, so that I am on the right track. Sometimes I may be thinking that certain things are correct for you. Suppose you feel that my approach could be different, you can always suggest to me. Most welcome, dear friends. I will be able to change my ways according to your benefit. So thank you very much. God bless you abundantly.